Nick and Schwab used to slap each other before they deal in debates to wake each other. That's a tactic.
Right here, Chicago.
Yeah. I'm going to let him get it.
I'll start reading. Is that okay? Well, that happens, or
I was gonna
You just start as soon as.
just wait like a minute.
okay. Just the brass.
I want to flow. I don't like balls.
Mojo's ponytail
There you go.
during debate. That's not that.
Jason, it's like dodgeball.
Yeah, right.
It's like
Yeah,
everyone's
like
just
that.
slapping each other's stomachs.
New standards, like, well, I'll just start.
Because you have to.
I think all relevant parties are fine.
Okay, we're here.
Yeah. Squad life.
The United States federal government should restrict the president's war powers authority for targeting killing his first or outside zones back of hostilities, evangelizing terrorism, the plans keep friend escalating public backlash against future drug use and going 13 is likely the U.S. will be forced to serve on certain investing public affairs fight or including most government judges to use bases drug force on side by default resistance domestic domestic political pressure civilian little strikes and places the IAG second on disability judges for the 7th world offers second world victim against the current legend negative trend and while being transparent checks while they put the my advice and support knowledge country population checks for and critical force by something support is accepted to property activities strikes that mechanism to be able to try to reduce anger or previous wildlife drone policy public backlash commits legal crackdown hammers the target killing program Goldsmith in 12 the all archaeologists immediately about battle the earlier law world to receive use target practices and so the person get about the first support is what we use international living sort of works expressions each other second mechanism for direction really is using consequences for like these guys started to felt with guns like this without any community attack the ability to protect the operators when the visual impact for the legal servants while for the lawful TV target killing to be only the plan can retain allied cooperation counterterrorism and crystal of our friends except only law enforcement responses that leaders like our public countries cooperation country share intelligence report with evidence switch terrorist that's part of the US officials and the gold is to be respect our personal health for allies we need to work with their actions program rational agreements with global so we can go over what is hard to get cooperation easy for terrorists to find new groups it's not some abstract philosophy support reality and we can back our partners but law enforcement we ban these rules allied cooperation key to effective drug use sector 13 neither Russia or Congress like British admitted Algeria US even by US others have rights have been unable to secure based on terms and technology got for their qualifications between US military activities the allegations have to be discussion and there's split drones and requires science and fantasy the most basic groups will present their aggressive flight and time oversight rights is they got for little drones to damage our organization for soul for our qualified evidence Simpson 817 Canadian in officer works in the future market that they take over but Syria versus both like the organization in fact for a long time market the board brings them back to the front now if all the Syrian boards last episode of one super instrument country that also been set up with move from those to the bottom the university market they went through and something with the US to install by the using the AA VC rocket leaders and drones all say David's friends attacking the US Johnson and 12 military leaders are killed potentially increased terrorist campaigns and not such a different in terms of managed to lower muscle orders like these enable deliver targeting certain lies under the natural passion to join voters and numerous attacks and sort of workers with the damage weaken the organization critical promoting direct major attacks in the US all kind of central leadership have scattered global communicated with Bill Laden's letter service factors and run the organization more difficult the US counter-terrorism membership in fact Mr. It's difficult to constantly say even nuclear terrorist this does not mean it's so terrorism condition runs force like designing significant financial conditions time that attack on nuclear exposure occurring next thing terrorism is the mechanism for social coercive relation which are limitated to national incremental of racism is limited nuclear exchange of things like maximum spreading war with this success because US Russian miscalculation station barrier and 13 war involving US Russian nuclear arsenal and global pressure free collapse Mars sensation extinction command and Trump capabilities and counterattacks war suffering the average nuclear war can you rest of towards the US and Russia and launch terrorism and nuclear revolution especially from the Afghanistan increase your kind of thought nuclear unexecutive nations like in the Western defense attacks most qualified evidence as attacks feasible threat assessment in what we can talk about these press nuclear investigation about this material the solar blah 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 market the US these hours attack progress in the civilization for sure for testing law the black market is execution non good because people consider group result of especially with not different 1 per second nuclear terrorism occurs against who is norms on frustrating drug use outside of zones back to hostilities collapses legal norms governing targeting killing the plan is key Brooks in 13 majority technology using hot battlefields president illegal the activities enable like drug tech post significant challenges from nuclear kill police parties confused to the battlefield one increasing access during square banks criminals existing law against broken on the worst number of the things that break study for the values result of market the measures search are not possible by fire military base for signing on characters US certain terms other states will fall markets and results not like the British use and whether advance less from the US and evidence of limit for how to get a little away for this legal theories potential significantly see less collective preserve the executive branch sole arbiter that solves global war US precedents keep Roberts 13 the cooperation projects move up and control the US and countries direct representation really fast and second civil and president application on the US Obama as the executive market for congressional overseas versus counter by courts who chose that especially by battlefields as human rights goes to government religion but their connection to their law position DC plus and her which is rank cares that strikes sense here Russia present almost to create Turkey arms a radical care special built in September almost under carbon point Russia because discuss Washington over figure out such clear rules which would create legal development and fertility legitimate war abuses what happens when the transaction rules the constitution see the secretary strike balance and cashiers as states using as the first of the first lead to wider exposure and their connected and affairs of the US agriculture the US future fully mentioned the arm aircraft blue with the force of new support outside the boards ranking people about the legal positions to get presidency are asking people trust by people to see the version of the administration lights and the EU the negro representatives by the which is the key for the U.S. States. Use the most of the States abuse that are based in the past by House of Presidents across the rest of the world, critical flanks of the U.S. will have raised the moment drones, caused out China scenes, and got conflict. U.S. President is keen as booty in 13, where China's been close to all the movement. Good, Japan, Chinese security system. Yes, because of the lack of international recognized state in China's following the precedent set by the U.S. Navy, the U.S. can China, Navy, the North Centers Foundation, such as the sea drones. They also fear China, Japanese control, China, detention for Chinese and Japanese governments that compare each other, and Japan frequently does scrambles fighters, SCS, complicated extinction, Whitner, 11 gather attention between the U.S. China, the U.S. President, Chinese defense, not just nuclear war, not necessarily there are signs that good cargo war between the United States and business wars occur, that conflict almost like nuclear war, immediately started temporary limitation to reduce radioactive waste and recent off the sun, bring a nuclear running winter on the globe, Chicago conflict, cause extinction, Baker, told China, is what national balance with Russia, Pakistan, North Korea, Japan, but all around China, we're technically the war could open nuclear and nuclear war, the numbers of living in each country, the short-term attempts of balance, that's going to extinction, the UN with Wonder Child, people survive with plan, and like eradicate solvency. Only congressional action was no possible since the clear signal of the U.S. applies to the laws of armed conflict as Anderson intended was originally supposed to be rational in terms of defense of the international community, which is investing that is used to violate international legal rational of the use of tradition seems to occur Congress are always going to certainly got a signal to force the international community. The two political branches are united. The international fraternity producer one of the workers to which over split justify the law of justification for using the fight the enemy outside nation conceived of hostilities armed conflict laws force the fact that the president associated conflict is one of the bigger ways the U.S. government sees it different to international community question lawfulness of attacking outside judicial battlefield. So we always have special place around this about this security about all the answers. Well, the alternative figure future residents need to know that they have now publicly and firmly asserted legal defense agreement limits the law and status quo administration policy delineates between geographic zones for a legal justification for war everywhere remains in place to work in 13, the administration, that's just the policy contracts everything these individuals supposed to do and threat that we made by international workers from the global conflict or law because it's an expensive precedent military officials said the conflicts only are possible relationary outside various actions legal diversity will boycott shop these balls over other reasonable alternatives this will be used and started supposed to be united that the must be space to deny that's why being these standards remain unclear nevertheless they represent meaningful change. This official policy standards are more general laws of our company new policy adoption of self-defensive to the fact basis for strikes new standards would seem to prohibit safe strikes through levels of tax hardly to measure the new standards represent policy decision rather than revise legal obligation to the illustration of the U.S. right lawful to any member wherever remains in place as precedent limiting the use of force for source critical sustainable consensus building on targeted killing standards as Task 13. The U.S. intends to do conflicts eligible to concern about the degree of war the is over commercial policy actually law recommended the broad assuming conflicts distribution of the fact facilities other areas that offers to them these force first of the U.S. already adopted policy distinction zones and mostly recognizing forces distinction about the perfect law the U.S. can begin such a build international consensus. This is current administration policy needs to be formalized. Task 13 of the trades would be the essential fair justice for U.S. practices to condition with the service skills that have competition towards the advantage of areas of self-control field should be security guidance on women the action of 30 that's zones back in facilities how they serve and also support the U.S. but the conversion of the inclusion of this aggression purpose matters the effectiveness of characters and depends on allies while the U.S. the conflict actions and third response to international other states will follow suit defense strong for experts on SCS that's white and involved Japan went to war with China with the Sakaki Johnson war we contain the finishing more knowledge of the today's all that this operation trying to push back China's Russian pressure with the Sakaki business which will continue to spiral war against no one can stop any concession we see this back on the future for the cost of invasion because Washington first so you can make concessions Washington they can turn back on the individual concessions for that meaning seeds of terrible this kind of large issue power and all say draws in the U.S. economists in 13 China and shares on the virtual China for international actors or so as the difference with the exception with this change after trade nationalize the allies Japan things are going to be here triggered by American supply chain trade data connected by variables so far as a century ago are going to be by trade takers such as the manufacturer direction. Simulation of national security law debates is the best pedagogical approach and compete agency decision-making skills on a 13. The idea was to bridge gap between theory, facts, and conflict for outdoor students would be enforced by public research for student security, agency responsibility scenarios. Plus, like national security, really fact that the instance does not take place in rural settings, there have been carried students or predict that the same consequences, charges that will be back to rich. Learning says scenarios of high consequences, to ensure the student recognize the dimensions of security law. It focuses on specific third decision, which every research force involved in the substance. The simulation also from the decisions becomes the specific areas developed. The approach dominated legal education grid also the secret areas like legal likeness and advanced current coach also providing maximum phase regards to simulation peer to simulation provides starting point use of technology facilities engagement so they really teach responsibility for the decision making resulting in AC learning. It's like when you have someone flip the slides for you. That was inefficient, to say the least.
So what other options do we have besides targeting?
Capture, detain, whatever.
How do we determine if TKs can be met as a first result?
Well, there's a long list of checks that the administration currently goes through. So, for example, would it be more dangerous to detain than it would be to kill? Would it be feasible to detain or
What do you mean dangerous?
Is the intelligence?
Hold on. It seems like sending a person to capture someone versus complying
flying an unmanned drone is inherently more dangerous.
Don't hang your hat on that. That's not exactly the legal language involved.
Yeah, well then please enlighten me, because it seems to be danger to our operatives. You don't think that's on the U.S. priority list?
I think that gets factored in, but it's not a legal formalized test. I can list what those are for you.
No, I gotta move on because I can choose 40 seconds. Your Chris evidence says that our friends accept only a law enforcement response outside of theaters of active conflict. Countries will restrict their cooperation.
Yeah,
Where does this evidence say that countries accept the first resort?
Here's a quote for you from Gaskell.
It's good. I got the answer. I got the answer I needed. Sorry, I gotta move on. What can drones do to solve terrorism?
Decapitation is pretty important. Attacking leaders in sort of multiple stages.
Why doesn't that just create more people to
hierarchy.
hate us?
Sorry.
Why doesn't that just create more people to
I
hate
mean, that's sort of a nice assertion. The Johnston evidence aggregates all the literature previously done on targeted killings. It runs new statistical models and says that there's empirical evidence that's not only prevented attacks against the U.S. homeland, but it's destroyed the ability to plan those attacks in the future.
Okay, thank you. Your Brooks evidence says, take the issue of sovereignty. Sovereign states possess the right to control their own internal affairs, free from interference of other states. If the plan allows the U.S. to send people to snatch and grab operatives in Yemen, why doesn't that violate norms of sovereignty just as much as true in
Yemen would be a zone of active hostility, which means you would go to the government and conduct the tests that I was about to describe earlier.
So we asked the Yemeni government to conduct the test for us?
Well, the Yemeni government... Capture feasibility entails a consultation. And the reason why that works in Yemen is that Yemen is allied with the U.S. But places like London need to know that we can't just fly a drone over.
But we can't just send in special ops forces.
No, not without their consent.
What part of the plan mandates that, and what evidence do you have that
that's just if the U.S. is going to...
Well, no, because the warrant for drones is that if people worry it violates their sovereignty, why wouldn't the U.S. just do the same thing?
You are right that if the plan does not cover a CIA invasion of Yemen, we will concede that.
What is China's second resort in the SCS?
That's not really the point. It's that they can't send drones over the border.
What if they don't have another thing to resort to?
Well, they don't need to resort to drones, but the legal, the idea is that
so what would they do instead of the SCS
in a future miscalculating environment, they would send drones over that.
No, I got that. But in the world of the plan, what do they model by the U.S. that would be their first
resort? That you can't send drones into areas outside of that.
Okay, but the plan gives the U.S. the flexibility to do other stuff. What other stuff can China do in the SCS?
Well, the point I think that you're conflating is the difference between offensive operations over the South China Sea and miscalculation based on territorial violations.
That was 32 seconds.
For advantage 1, advantage 2.
I guess we'll give the judge the
For the terrorism advantage of the north.
What was the case?
Advantage 1, advantage 2. Everyone ready? Yep.
Critique security is the psychological construct, the scenarios of conflict, product, paranoia, projectile violent impulse on the other side, full understanding of enemies from Christ, psychology, science, there's no science based regarding human suppressing real truths, and that people psychological enemy by with enemies real list of not address what target issues about how we created that enemy, we never see our enemy with objectivity, we were taught not to think about how our enemies lack of historical accuracy, the first week of war begins in the mind of digital random, responsibility leaders, psychological right, compelling, individual loud killing. Our response is to interrogate the epistemological failures of the one is the only way to solve for a number of teaching on and 12 recommendation to shift our frame away from station to security.
Can you scratch that card? We can come back to the K. I want to read a different card.
Okay, we'll read a different alt card. Next up. Politics. Congress will ultimately over compromise to avert a shutdown now 920 despite political and real combination of how Congress works with politicians will make change the shutdown and certain the best possible scenarios last minute compromise like there being intent shutdowns time but I do party plans like emotion tendency selection regular voices but on spectrum forwarding and shutdown center would remove the funding of Obama making demand change from local government back to the plan would trade off with Congress's ability to revert to shut down GOP has momentum and will, but they need literally every hour to get it done. James 9:13. More time to negotiate for running publicly work without learning to plan for touchdowns. One of our European lawmakers will need every hour of additional time to focus more exactly coalescing around anyone legislative factor. We're continuing to work with our members that wrecks the economy. Woo 827 government shutdown would inflict enormous damage to the economy. The shutdown result in deeper slowdowns and turnities would discourage businesses, global nuclear war, Harrison bars, 9. The congressional less includes harmful flex, monks, multi down the 21st century. Would go in and both having returns from the time to growth of communities and most leaders. Not to have communities will be. These things are practically ambitious conflict in relation with clever conflict. The anti-nationalist proximity may place always obvious escalating the crisis which results in interstate conflicts. Next off is the counterplan text. The United States federal government should condition the use of the president's authority for targeted killings as a first resort to instances of self-defense or response to attack by a non-state actor located within a state has consented to the United States carrying out targeted killing missions within its borders, or that is unwilling or unable to prosecute or neutralize with such actors. The standard of unable or unwilling should require offering notice when feasible to the targeted state and allowance of time for a good faith effort to neutralize the threat to the United States. Ability should be defined by analysis of the level of sovereign control the state exercises over the territory in which the relevant non-state groups are located. This counterplan competes. It's functionally distinct from the plan because it makes no reference to active hostilities or geographical limits on targeted killing authority. It solves the entirety of the case. The U.S. and every other state already justify targeted killings with the unable and unwilling framework. No other legal model will ever achieve status as a norm. The plan forfeits the ability to shape the norm by clarifying its criteria. Deeks 2012. International law currently gives U.S. any state level guidance to the country. Practice suggests some law for state extra attacking use for statewide state laws unwilling to arrest many needs to be unwilling or unable is the correct standard to assess legality of forced targeted offenses used for erratic planning. The rights unable to express the PKK. A state suffers attacking concludes as necessary use of forced self-defense. The test requires the victim to assert whether church states unwilling to test. According here, content undermines the legitimacy of the test as not imposing effective change start with analysis to the final word needs to be unwilling or unable. The rules of the law country may seem to particularly instructive. The fact that states currently are acclimated to using unwilling or unable suggests that any other test would have to overcome a high bar to become preferred. A hurdle no other option is poised to meet. The test should constrain the number of situations in which a victim state resorts to force. The test should establish procedures to test that promotes the goals I have described as likely to be seen as a credible international norm. It will legitimize uses of force that are consistent with the test requirement and delegitimize and reduce frequency of those intentions. And next up. It's net beneficial. The restricting targeted killings as a first resort outside active hostilities collapses CT by signaling availability of safe havens and immunity from strikes. That unwilling, unable framework is distinct and a better alternative. Core in 2013. There is no need to define a geographic scope of military ops, doing so would fundamentally undermine U.S. counter ops and overswinging exactly what to pursue safe haven immunity from U.S. insurgent. That's really see code of confrontation, posting arbitrary geographic limitation. The scope of military ops would be inconsistent with friendly future terrorist attack. There's a hot battlefield operational fiction. Nothing in the law of armed conflict defines battlefield. Geographic scope must be dictated by totality of assessment factors driven by strategic and threat dynamics are not some geographic blocks must drive scope of hostilities. I do not suggest it is proper to view the entire globe as a battlefield, suggesting the proper scope is dictated by legal conception of hot battlefields. Operationally irrational placing policy limits is appropriate and has been the cornerstone of U.S. policy interpreting the law to place legal limits of scope creates the perverse incentive for the belligerent enemy by allowing him to dictate where he will be subject to a lawful attack. Balance between authority and policy reflected in the unable or unwilling test in the circumstance where object of attack is identified in another country, not providing consent for the U.S. military action. Policy plays a decisive role only when the country is unable or unwilling to address the threat will attack. The authorized the executive is best positioned to make those judgments. Imposing a statutory scope limitation would best terrorists would benefit the sovereignty. Retaining the legal option of first resort killing is key to military training. Breaking that paradigm collapses operational effectiveness. Core intent. While it may be tempting to assume shifting from one use of force paradigm to another is simple, those familiar with training and operational effectiveness know that this is highly complex. Effective training must be mission-driven. Preparation for armed conflict must focus on primarily developing warrior ethos derived from armed conflict use of force paradigm. Generally, as I mentioned, first resort soldiers are trained to employ deadly force against targets irrespective of the conduct they encounter. Specifically, special forces conduct first resort targeted killings outside of armed conflict zones. Now, back in 13 TK has been used by the U.S. outside theaters of war in Pakistan, using joint strike defensive forces to conduct preemptive targeted killing operations. Special forces readiness is key to counter-proliferation, solve nuclear war. Thomas 13 as nuclear powers go arsenals as forces continue to pursue nuclear capabilities. Starts of nuclear as well as the use of nukes will increase that to distribute across the spectrum of WCON and counter IW efforts stopping aggression by hostile things with terrorists. Nuclear brands are used to see how the global CT network as a bill could become a global center for WMD network.
Can I read the KL?
Yep.
Okay, back to the guy.
The alternative is to reject the image of the enemy, only interrogating the psychological underpinnings of administration to solve inevitable war files. 2003, May of warfare made the unlocking control of Russian hospitality war, like representing centralization of unconscious fantasy splitting up, plays important role in concept of the other failure controlled war, requires a psychoanalytic explanation of enemies, mass, internal conflicts in the enemy that are regular resistance from an investigating enemy. There's not really one available, or represents the need for an enemy, so they can keep ourselves together in paranoid position they're splitting, protection from prevents nations from understanding what divides them, denial allows groups to ignore the fact that external nations are involved in the process of inflicting background protections. We like to burn negative identification as a means of empathizing and containing difference. Case. Intelligence sharing sustainable. New York Times 13 decades of cooperation to World War II. There's a very high level of volume materials and shared automatically. My doc is just going to do. Other nations to intercept communication that are shared broadly. European needs to benefit from drone killing. Extremely broad support means they can't be for intel sharing means there's no advantage. Osawako 11, 9, 11 peace intelligence cooperation with many other states. 9, 11 isolation between the U.S. This foreign services have increased to a number and grown deeper. Intelligence sharing is independent of politics. European states saw a real threat. North. No causal link between U.S. drone drops into other countries' choices means we can't set a precedent. Anderson 11, that looks at U.S. leaders and other countries who are following asserting that we're creating this claim that arms use over drones is a consequence of the U.S. changing rules about using it. There are a number of reasons to doubt the U.S. created or could have stopped the UAVs will move into many roles because it's cheaper, safer, reliable. Any state that feels like developing able to having this happening anyway and technology was available to the U.S. has non-sparks and arms. This is just a fantasy reading the U.S. open Pandora's box. Not a credible understanding of technology weaponizing is not typical of the U.S. non-spark arms. This is not heard anything with the drone. U.S. drone use does not set a precedent. Restraint does not solve it, and norms don't apply there anyway. At COE, 13 critics said by the U.S. using drones in the lead. Other countries that follow the U.S. Should have employed drones in the hope that the show restraint of other even the U.S. did not develop predictive weapons. Others in China taking the lead anti-ship missile cyber countries do not play a self-sustained role. They play whatever ones they obtain. They would have will further interest. The U.S. correctly does not assume we can rely on non-existent gentleman agreement. But drones are one step in development of battlefield technology. In such circumstances, rules of norms are much more limited. Zero chance that countries like China give up their drones because of U.S. self-restraint. Boot 11. The New York Times engaged in scaremongering about the drone race. Copycatting is a familiar trope that liberal critics who are claiming every for war going. Otherwise, our enemies will dominate. This argument falls apart because it is founded on a false premise that other nations will follow our example. China is hell-bent on getting drones. There's little reason to think self-restraint will get matched. If we didn't refrain from strikes, would China really decide to take a soft line on Uyghurs or Russia on sanctions? That seems unlikely given the viciousness those states employed decision to stop drone strikes. Would unlikely to alter Russian or Chinese thinking. There's no SES tensions inevitable won't escalate even if they win a huge internal link. Mean 12 tensions unlikely to persist. Politics in China however that the SES will maintain turbulent. No government can refer to maybe through some escalation higher, but these firms are not likely to escalate within China. Co-heads likely to prevail. China's top brass will be reluctant to significantly escalate the situation since it will send Southeast Asian government trying to Washington. Military opponents in China realize that it costs confidence too high since it will bring in Washington's presence in the region and disrupt trade flows and economic spread. Conflict escalation, Korean 12 closure, sometimes would affect the entire global economy. No countries interested in simply their disruption and the sea link implies mutually assured economic destruction that should moderate the behavior of opposition to small military disputes or possible the economic risks of extended conflict are so great that significant changes in the status quo are likely to syncopies. No war in the syncopies, Rulers 12, no most experts are the chance of arrival of war, some unattended class between Tokyo, Michigan, or Texas, managed row. There would be national sentiment, but national unpaid experts agree that neither would unintentionally escape pressure from the U.S. and or understand both sides. Two actual governments would not enter a war over the rocks. There are broad channels of communication, economic interference, two capture fees, trade limit, between China and Japan, even though tensions are rising economic and economic version of mutual deterrence, perverting the status quo fears, not materialize. China needs to divide Japanese alliance as much as Japan needs to tell China would not boycott Japan, let alone precipitate armed conflict without stopping economic miracle that underpins communist rule, economic tension, Washington, will likely keep the peace. The U.S. can effectively restrain both sides now. Rulers 12, creations, both something are very, very slim because the other side wants to do that. Pressure from the U.S. is working to restrain both sides. They don't want to risk it. They don't want to seek it. They do not intend to let it happen. Where should I start? Politics evidence. Your Cohen evidence says the Senate would remove defunding Obamacare, making minor changes with political cover to back it. Voters across the spectrum warn against the shutdown. A probable scenario is a last-minute compromise. How does the plan change the fact that they will come back from the brink?
It's just an agenda crowd-out argument. That's like when they come back from
Well,
the
that's
break.
like a buzzword. But
I mean, our evidence says there are a certain number of hours that the bill is going to be needed to
and
be
your evidence also says that no matter what, they're going to compromise at the last minute to not go off the brink.
That assumes the status quo absent the plan's introduction. The Congress would rethink
Is
trades
politics
off
a
with
net
the agenda.
benefit to the counterplan?
No.
Do you have any evidence about drones, either for the counterplan or the D8 net benefit?
Yeah, our core evidence is fantastically specific about using force as a first measure of response.
Well, that's not the word drones. Drones.
Right. The one in the evidence I don't think uses the word drones.
Do any of them? Yeah, okay, so none of these cards are right.
But, I mean, what else do you think are lethal killing measures?
I don't know, like...
Snipers from a distance?
I guess, like, that kind of brings me to talking
also do
about...
have
Well, I'm moving on to my next question. This brings me to talking about the special forces argument. Here is your link card to special forces readiness, the entirety of it. TK has been used by the U.S. outside theaters of war in Pakistan. In Pakistan using, that's not actually a grammar, drone strikes and special forces to conduct preemptive target killing operations. How on earth do you even think that says it's key to special forces overall?
The internal link is the corn card. We read this one, right?
Yeah.
The corn
To
card.
special forces?
No, the part
retaining,
which you.
the part about retaining the legal option of first resort killing is
Yeah,
key.
and I'm talking about your special forces.
Training is the
external
This is important. Training is the internal link to special ops
Yeah.
readiness because they are trained.
No, this court evidence is not about special ops forces. It's about soldiers, like ground troops, infantry.
What
Is the word special operations
all
force
of the
anything?
all of the
broader.
okay, you are like really nitpicking. All of our
No, that's
forces.
not nitpicking.
Hold on, no, this is really important because you're just wrong. All of our forces that conduct snatching grabs, anything that the plan has to do with, are all special ops.
What
They
does
are
the
not
plan have to do
soldiers.
with snatch and grab?
But I mean, like, it's the first resort in role of the plan.
You read
That's all
Etzioni
Jason.
and blue cards that both say that the U.S. will not convince other countries to give up their drones. How about, well, actually, no, that's fine.
You don't think that is about the
Whose psychology
the one that's-
leads to lash out? Like, you read two cards about security, and they're like, when we have a psychology of fear, that means that we're more likely to lash out. So, like, who? Is it the president, Congress?
Well, obviously, this is kind of a framework question. We think that the role of the ballot would be to analytically position themselves as a critical intellectual, but we will win
Doesn't answer my
arguments.
question at all.
Hold on. We will win arguments also on the level of policy implementation of the record that yes, it would result in violent lash out by the
So, hey, the president?
Yeah.
So, like, the president, so what, like, invades another country? Or, like which one?
I don't know, like the ones that you talk about in the one I see, like Yemen, Somalia. We'll probably just resort to.
That seems
there's a-
unlikely. That seems unlikely.
We're going to read actually circumvention Ev in the block that says, well, circumvention was out.
That's compared to circumvention. I asked you politics yesterday.
Yeah.
Is that like that you'll read in the block is in your
Wait, sorry. Politics is definitely not something. That's for sure.
futurity, they are asking you to be the unitary executive precisely to determine the nature of the political body. This inevitably fails, creates the conditions of possibility for the accident, constitution that was above, and politics, our interpretation is key to open up debate to the new. Their model of debate is fundamentally anachronistic. It doesn't equip us with the capacity to deal with social acceleration. They produce a form of agency that desires authoritarian management of political identity, leads to more unpredictability because they can't actually account for all of the others within debate itself. Perverse substantive impacts process first product. If we win, even if they win, they perfect the technical debate. It doesn't matter if we win that their framework produces fundamentally violent and atomistic subject. Debate is not just a meaningless game, but how we form a political subjectivity. A fact that framework also concedes no impact on fairness. The disparities are inevitable since historically disproven self-correcting reasonability. Voting out doesn't eradicate policy debate. The role of the judge should be determined whether we made a good contribution to a larger body of debate. Also, top cutting debates don't solve any of this, or if they do, they just solve the skills. However, we need to talk about and analyze the process of speed, which topicality debates does not capture. It makes a bunch of predictability arguments, but there is no predictability. That's our futurity argument. This is obvious for us because we're directly impacted in the quest for stability. That was our futurity argument above. He makes a bunch of simulation arguments. We are the best simulation because we are the only ones that actually throw you the sea of speed, which is exactly what we're talking. What social life is like right now. Their form of simulation is isolationist and bad hoofty. And 9. Further touched by the simulation industry function exposing one to the accident in order to not be exposed to it. Simulation fragments space through the positivity and instantaneous correct connection with a faraway place. Eventually there will be two realities, the actual and the virtual, and the privileged speedily will be able to live the illusion of gauging with social reality that the virtual gets at the cost of the slow class will suffer the social and ecological effects of real time. Not seeking to reduce the world to the point where one can possess it. They make a bunch of decision making arguments linked to the attempt to manage speed is only the death of decision making. That's what evidence above. We are the best way.
Do you believe that ice the kid applies more to debate, or thinking time applies more? Like, is it good or bad for you?
Well, it's not true.
Conceded that the most qualified experts attack is inevitable in the status quo, which means they can't win any uniqueness. For the Turns case arguments, NYT evidence is a two-line snapshot. Germany is a good empirical example. They aren't cooperating with us because they don't because of the lack of a geographic standard. They've specifically said so. Their second card is a history lesson. It only references 9/11. Prefer newer evidence. Norms advantage. Yes, precedent. Geography is the key issue. The Anderson evidence concludes after the underlined VSU card says that proliferation is happening in the status quo. That's congruent with Zenko in the 1AC that says 75 countries are pursuing drones, but the impacts that we have are about the way that they're used vis-a-vis sovereignty infringements, which means it's not a solvency takeout. China already has drones, which non-uniques the circumvention argument, but the territory issue is the make it or break it for miscalculation because vis-a-vis Japan. The made-out evidence is uniqueness, where it says that in the status quo there is tension in the South China Sea, but that it's controllable because of communication. That would not be the case with autonomous interacting missile defense systems. Self-interest does not solve sovereignty concerns because that is the definition of self-interest. A state trying to protect itself from an incursion. Their writer's card is not qualified, and the cat's card is talking about a boycott of drones, but that is not something that is relevant to our public internal link. Their second writer's card is from last year. You should prefer drone-specific evidence. Territory is the key issue in the Caucasus. We only plan solves nuclear war. Clinton 12. Armenia and Azerbaijan could soon be a war. Drone proliferation continues in a region where fragile peaceful nations of South Caucasus are buzzing with drones they use to probe defenses. The region is searched to find finds a tangled web of alliances, precious resources, the threaten to quickly escalate to a wider regional conflict that could pull in Israel, Russia, Iran, the ICG warned that for 10 incidents to complete accidental war could start at any moment. Azerbaijan is passing drones. The drones are attempting to because international law remains vague on legality. Analysts believe global war between Armenia and Azerbaijan would be difficult to contain. War would be a recipe for quick escalation to the international level. Armenia is allies with Russia. The criticism, the role of the balance the plan. Key to decision-making and fairness, that's Donahue. Perm do both cases. It says it refuses to grapple with the threats in the international system, means we can't clearly communicate to other states. It does. They can't turn terror. There are representations now. They've been enacted. They've been extant since 9/11, which disproves causality. There's no psyche lash out. It doesn't come first. Carol 6 behavioral picture seems to negate the divide as a separate energy for behavior. Nervous system is not passive. It does not take into account out energy from the environment. It shows no tendency to discharge impulses. Principle of constancies without any biological basis. The notion of tension is conveniently ambiguous. Empirical evidence suggests tension reduction has been mounting steadily. The organism and the mental system are no longer considered closed systems. The death drive is part and parcel of erroneous assumptions about the nervous system. Here's topic-specific evidence. Positive 3 before the emergency. Officials do not think vigorously about threats. Fear stimulates them to actions. Impossible to say whether actions promoted by fear are better than actions made in a state of calm. The response to 9/11, no doubt felt fear, but this fear is not the kind in which cognition shuts down. The research suggests people who feel anxious about a non-immediate threat are incapable of thinking properly or overweight the threat relative to the values. It does not fear, which leads to restrictions of civil liberties. Post-11 curtailment scheme. After deliberation, one speech act doesn't cause securitization. Gugush to be elite 10. The causality between speech act and securitizing act has been criticized. Process of threat construction can be clear. A single speech act does not produce discourse, but it's created through a long process. A single speech will not securitize an issue. Conditionality promotes sophistry, advocacy, times to strategies, giving the F never win. Dispositionality ensures some level of strategic control. It's uniquely worse because of a performative contradiction. Their economy impact is a construction of a threat, and their link evidence is generic, so they can't back off on this. They can't solve China. Callahan 5B. China threat theory ends up confirming that they seek to deny Japan, India, Southeast Asia, increasingly threat by Chinese participants. Those who pronounce China a threat must be crazy. China threat theory text vigorously reduce the dangers of the very threat they seek to deny rather than adding to the debate. They end up releasing what Chinese informers can rationally say would be easy to turn the course, but that would be a mistake because depending on circumstances, anything can be interpreted as a threat. The purpose is not to argue interpretations of false in relation to some realities such as China is fundamentally peaceful rather than warlike, but that is necessary to unpack the political and historical context of each perception of threat. Drones don't cause lash out either. They can't turn terror at CLE 13. The drones under my checks on war does not stand up to minimal examination drivers. There's no effect on leadership. There's no evidence drones are made more likely. The opposite may hold if the U.S. cannot draw on drones. The nation may rely on conventional troop prolonged employment, which can increase casualties and warfare. Drones allow America to intervene with flexibility, effectiveness. Drones are more structured, scrutinized, and reviewed and justified. The counterplan. Perm do both. Perm do the counterplan. They procedurally define the results of geographic restrictions by saying within borders as the criteria in the counterplan text. We don't restrict self-defense. It's enshrined in Article 2. So the counterplan is a replication of the status quo. Chesney 12b. President has the authority obligation under Article 2 to defend the country with or without explicit legislative authorization. Using force in no way commits the president to an open-ended war dealing from Al-Qaeda. Functional and textual differences are key to prevent bad picks. Our whole 1EC is a geography key warrant. Allies want to know they're out of harm's way before they'll cooperate on terrorism. That's Chris. Being nice doesn't get modeled because it doesn't solve low acts. Specifically the EU, their key Dworkin. 13, it is not surveillance that produces complications for the transatlantic intelligence relationship, but America's use of drones away from the battlefield. Europe's immediate stance looks likely to change. European countries are trying to acquire drones. This gives them an incentive to develop clear rules. Drones are proliferating rapidly. There's a clear interest in trying to establish restrictive standards before it's too late. Can Europe and the US come together? Until now, that seemed impossible. Obama could open the possibility his administration was switching policy so that outside zones hostilities will use only drones against individuals who pose an imminent threat. However, there remains big step one box. Obama's new approach only applies to some policy choices. Expansive legal claims remain in the background. Geography is key to norm setting. Books where to the US rests on a flexible reading of the law. The policy choices staggering implications. If there's no force of military force at any time without warning, other states will claim the same rights and we risk an escalating spiral of unconstrained violence. That also means the counterplan does nothing. Brooks 4, there were no geographical boundaries. There are few legal constraints on U.S. behavior. U.S. forces can kill unfettered by legal constraints. There means no effective enforcement mechanism able to restrain U.S. behavior abroad. Nonetheless, the U.S. has accepted constraints that has a spillover effect in other areas of law that do contain clear guidelines. The difference between policy and law is actually the whole act. Congress 12. Because conflicts on the battlefield lack clarity is fostered ad hoc approaches. It's clearly inappropriate in international circles. It's a global conflict. There are battlefields in our nation. The U.S. is not alone. State practice reveals an inherent tension in legal framework. Limits must be explored to define clearly what is and is not the battlefield. In the newest realm of war, law of armed conflict must be readdressed. The framework, the battlefield helps control and check force. The plan does not specify what status gets used outside conflict zones, which means we leave both the status test and the imminent threat test that are currently in use in place, which means either the counterplan links to the dis act or we do not. The dis act. The status quo disproves the link. Actual administrative practice is geographically restricted now, so terrorists should have already priced in the advantage to relocating. There's no impact uniqueness. The program is going to collapse in the status quo, which makes everywhere a functional safe haven. Allied cooperation solves the impact. Extradition, police co-op, intel sharing are all key. And specifically Europe, there's no escalation. If an attack occurs in another place, then that becomes a zone of hostilities, which then, under the plan, solves that impact. Heightened standards won't prevent any attacks. The counterplan links more to Article 13. A critical difference exists between the territory restricted framework and heightened procedural standards on use under the zone approach. The non-enemy is not free from attack, and least necessary means also solves. Goodman 13. The U.S. government already adopts the standard as a matter of policy. U.S. government adopts the feasibility of capture standard as legal constraint. Other states' armed forces operate with a lesser evil role. We don't impact special forces. Covert ops are war powers authority. Their internal link is about soldiers, not drones. And the plan text specifies special forces exist now. It's obviously sufficient to solve their impact, but DCAP is key to supplement intel sharing, which is specific to terrorism. Our evidence is an agglomeration of studies, and the fact that Al-Qaeda still exists disproves that we'll invade countries with the CIA just to get around the ability to use or not use drones because of diplomatic constraints. They can't turn the case by 13. In an ideal world, militants would be captured, but in war zones such as Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, arresting is highly dangerous and inefficient. These countries exert little control over remote areas where state governments have at times cooperated with militants. If the U.S. regularly sent in special ops sympathetic officials could tip off jihadists, even if a raid results in capture, if it gets what to do with a detainee, prosecuting in court is difficult because until it's inadmissible or using it risks jeopardizing sources. There's no impact to pro-lift and special ops can't possibly solve the motive, Bartley 11. Policymakers habitually overestimate the impact of nuclear weapons predictions. Invariably turned out wrong. Nuclear weapons consistently fail to undo power relationships despite a warning about Korea and up in the region is whether proliferation and not putting other sound fashion. Everyone has a strong incentive to lie about their importance. Fine states lie to Washington about how to right there of a nuclear round, not to let that lie because they now want to focus to manage the ability of Iran, exaggerated alarmist of a substitute for realistic appraisal policy landscape. Drones undermine deterrent posture everywhere, which means that it takes out impact uniqueness. The other dissent. Terrorist attack collapses the global economy, bell for 7. Direct economic damage would be $1 trillion reverting effects would come several times that an attack would stagger the world economy, thrust tens of millions into dire poverty, provoking widespread panic, economic disruption. There's no impact to shutdowns. Penkovsky 918 crucial services will continue without interruption. That includes military, law enforcement, social security, veterans benefits when there's a short-term lapse in appropriations. Government will not truly shut down. Such a lapse would neither be catastrophic or unprecedented, but it would pare down government services to those most essential for safety, human life, protection of property. The plan is a congressional legal affirmation of existing executive policy that disproves the logic of the interbranch fight. If it's just focused, then other things turn cause the link and disrupt the currency of Alberta 920. Republicans have orchestrated a plan to avoid shutdown the way Obamacare maintains spending levels. They need the Senate to shut the proposal. Conservatives spent this week celebrating the plan molded by leadership. Boehner is preparing a third option that keeps the government optional, not conceding on Obamacare. Instead of pieces in the way of Obama's health law, top Republicans are shifting their efforts from this year to the instilling a smart Republicans believe that leverage will be maximized when negotiating the borrow limit. The climate fight done in 918. Obama unveiled an ambitious agenda to combat climate. Obama plans to curb warming ahead into a House hearing. The administration using its regulatory authority. Congress finds it easier to destroy. It's difficult to know just how far congressional Republicans are prepared to go to stop the White House. Legal fights now. National Review 9-30. Obama is founding its political capital, experiencing devaluation on Syria. There remains challenges to healthcare. And shutdown fuses the Tea Party and avoids the debt ceiling. Internally turns the economy. Creeper 919. In a shutdown, Republicans would take the blame of the economy strong enough for the standard to avoid that. The White House would urge our Democrats to pursue caution. The latest twist guarantees a disaster in October. Boehner response folks will put the fight off yet again. The Tea Parties will see this capitulation of Boehner manages to avoid a shutdown. He will be 100% on the foot. The debt ceiling. The ceiling is much more dangerous. The shutdown takes people out of the economy. The ceiling will lead to default, trigger financial crisis. Our only hope is to have the shutdown that will allow the public to repeat the GOP before a ceiling comes. Avoiding the shutdown, Tea Party will interpret it as a unilateral disarmament by their leadership. The only outlet for the range will be the ceiling. It's not intrinsic to the agential capability of logical policymaker to pass the plan and avoid the shutdown and no negative activity policy options to research.
Okay. Your norms advantage, you say that our evidence isn't that great, etc. Why would China logically put down drones if the U.S. self-restrains?
Well, just to make it empirical.
Sorry, use. Why would they not use drones in the South China Sea? Because you're going to make that distinction. Why would they not use them if the U.S. self-restrains itself?
Well, this is what's so important for the counterplan. The territorial zones.
I'm trying for the capability of your internal link to solve. Regardless of comparing to the counterplan or not, now I don't care. Just as the internal link, the U.S. self-restraint, you have a reverse causal card that directly connects that to China not using drones in the South China Sea aggressively.
I think it's best if I read you a line.
Yeah, from a reverse causal line, that's great.
China's increased use as a concern about the lack of internationally recognized standards. China is following the precedent set by the U.S.
Yep.
The thinking is, if the U.S. can do it, so can we.
Not reverse causal. That's one direction. They're doing it because we're doing it.
The
If the U.S. stops, why would they stop?
The Roberts card above that says
Read the line from that. That says that they would stop. Seriously, there's no line in the 1AC that has that reverse causal claim. And Boone indicts that logic directly and says that we do it so they do it may make sense, but us stopping doesn't cause them to stop.
So here's a line from the Roberts card,
Yeah, read
the
that line.
8-page card that took Mark off 2 minutes. What happens if China strikes trawlers in the South China Sea, or if India uses the aircraft to strike militants near Kashmir? States using lethal force outside their borders can lead to wider escalation.
That's not reverse causal.
I
Azerbaijan and Armenia. I have to move on. I give you a minute.
Paragraph.
I give you a minute and a half, dude. Azerbaijan and Armenia. Your evidence says they're super close to war. Like, accidents are going to happen like soon, tomorrow, this year. Why does the norms, the plan set, stop that?
Argent 13 is even better than our impact card.
Yeah, so how do the norms that you create stop that fast enough? Seriously.
Again, this is a geography atom.
Geography atom. Okay. The impact, you read this card about war everywhere to counterplan. Then on the DA, you have a card that says...
I'm going to answer your last question because you didn't give me a chance. Here's a line from our card. Drones are a tempting tool because international law remains vague on legality.
So when we switch international law, they'll stop. That's great. Impact of war everywhere. You say that's a counterplan. On the DA, you say that there's no link because we can just shift to a new war zone when escalation happens.
Yes,
why does that not justify new war everywhere?
That is why the difference between functional war everywhere and legal war everywhere is the whole 1AC.
So legal war everywhere, fine. Functional war not, right?
LOAC has zones.
Okay.
Self-defense is exempted
Byman,
from LOAC because
this
states
Byman
believe in
card, I need to ask this question.
self-defense.
This Byman card says it would be super difficult, inefficient to do drones, to do captures in Yemen, etc. In the 1ACC Act, you say Yemen is not a war zone now. So how can we not use drones as a first resort then?
Because the counterplan binds us to consult everywhere, not just in zones, which is why it might
But
be
Yemen isn't a zone, and that card says we can't not use drones there. Like,
How much do we have? Like 9 something.
you know, 9, 20.
Yeah, that works. We gotta go like 4.
Well, I took a second because I had to figure out how many we had. So I wasn't like,
Yeah, we'll say 4.
No, the whole app.
I just paid you WOJ to see if they need more studies.
He's on.
Sorry.
Are you getting second?
Yeah.
Second, 8 seconds, second.
8 seconds, yeah. Go.
I don't even remember what I was gonna do.
Everybody's watching.
Your time is passed.
I'll just try to do 8 seconds. Actually? Yeah, they said 50. You know what? That's a short break, right? I just- It's time, it's fungible. Definitionally.
Still a little remote. It's so weird.
Yeah, exactly. 8 seconds. Did you hear that, Mark?
What?
I credited you 8 seconds. This is the official clock. That says 7:50.
You're so sour.
But the people like to use it, you just there'll be a backlash. You can't credit more than 15 seconds probably. Unless we don't have timers. That's what OEP is like. I bet Arnett will. What do you think if you EMP that team? Like electromagnetic devices. You can buy them on the internet for like $2,000. Yes. For a small scale direct EMP device. They have like about 10 feet of range. They're like tub size. Yeah, oh yeah, they're reusable. You have to plug them in. But you can hide them in that tub. And buy carbon laptop.
Yeah, it was like the last.
It was devastating.
The key would be like, you just made this debate last longer when they went and got another computer.
Oh, that's true.
So you really
But not if, what if it's like, dropping it into the 1AR?
Oh, Bill, do you want?
Yeah, I'll definitely take it. Sorry. Yeah. That's true. You have to say hard line.
Yeah, it's just like if you teach orange or something, you guys have a magnet.
It's just going to be impossible for me to be looking at one of y'all.
Oh, man.
You don't want the glare, or yes, or like glare? The mouse glare, it's not a thing. Okay. The K norms, then the warfighting git, like whatever it is.
Very exciting. K norms, safe havens.
K norms, yeah. The non-all.
I'm sorry, then what?
K-norms, then the safe havens you said?
The net benefit. The net benefit.
Okay, sorry. I'm there. I just kept saying it like under your breath. So I thought there was.
Oh, sorry, yeah. K norms, warfighting.
Yeah. There.
Okay.
Safe havens, net benefit, or fighting, they're all the same.
All right, we're good. The critique, we're not going to go over permutation, test, computation, non-inadequacy, for purposes of the arguments, reason to reject the argument not seeing conditionality, contribution, the judge consider any germane opportunity cost the affirmative vote, one counterplan, one K in this instance, H point, they show a cut, destroy, pulse, make, eliminate, egg, one adversary, artificially CF, against competitive options, skills, concept, analysis, B point 4, short, strategy, force, 2, recognize argument, interaction, critical, good advocacy against strategic opponents, you do not prop a bad apps that will lose in the market ideas, it's key to force, the affirmative defend their internal contradictions, C point, negative place, outweighs 2 hour persuasion, infinite, break, anger, amber, negative, often 2 anarchist names or theory and substance, well, 2 hour make these points, use never, every position, getting conditional, error, counterpunch, getting ground, roll it, voting issues, distraction, substance, turn education, arguments that we vote don't make debate, puzzle alone, voted for counter-information, the choice C was dispo, which is a logical, you should never choose, and option that is worse than the text code, don't let them to amend it in 1 hour. The case, norms. U.S. policy doesn't control
dual-use UAVs are cheap, safe, reliable to use because they are easy to use regardless of what the U.S. laws are. Anderson's question is fantastic. No one's here evidence compared to the plan. Even if the U.S. were trained to tell other countries see themselves as so useful, so there's no way they'll give up. That's boot down. They do not have a reverse causal card. Margins literally spend a minute and 30 in cross-site trying to get them to read one. They do not have, especially in the context of the plan, maintains other options as maintains targeted killing as a second resort, which means that we would still be violating sovereignty norms, etc. Which means that there's no reason why China would not be able to point to the say they would that TKs have to be their first resort in the South China Sea. There's no warrant for the President of the want to see why what else China would do. China has an interest in the South China Sea that they're pursuing, and that is what will drive them, not norms. Also, all of our evidence on the kind of plan the artists going to read the warrant not only specific about why they ask norms are not able to solve simply because countries will only follow norms that they think are in their self-interest. With the affirmative non-drug precedent art is incoherent. Anderson 13 creating up police for the rejecting America. These are not letting go. We're trying to let the field drug common text in Politburo pledge. Obama side doctrine. Tibet and absence. He was not going to use Jones. The vaccine is no special status for use no more farm bill. More limited within the law. Required to try to use might not use this way. Trying to pay legally Jones all be responsible. Will not be responsible. Leaders will. DA. Every time if we win the return terrorists, but always the targeting cases coming now, maybe the time frame is faster with all their advantages, norms modeling, take time, etc. for the terrorist attack will happen immediately after the plan because they're gathering materials in the status quo. Which is the biggest magnitude impact there. We're the only ones with enough big enough arsenal to destroy the entirety of the world, which also internally turns any miscalculation scenario. Though helmet out, it's a warrant for why terrorism escalated is that kinds of miscalculated nuclear war between all countries makes norms impossible because the US would obviously overreact to a terrorist attack. So any risk of the DA means that they can't solve their norms advantage, and there's only risk of terrorism outweighs. Now the line by line, they say the status quo takes out the link because it is a matter of policy. I want to see foreign evidence fantastic answers your policy law distinction, and that's a negative argument. Policy means that we are policy means that it's flexible and status quo. We are breaking it if necessary in order to solve attacks. Two, if it's true that terrorists perceive the status quo norms because it's impulsive, there's no reason why allies don't, there's no reason why codification is key but negative. On presumption, they say the program collapse now, the counterplan solves this. All of their evidence is generic. They do not they don't have any restrictions solve public backlash. They do not have a geography warrant for the public backlash argument now. They say Europe is key. Most of this will be handled in one or the counterplan is able to resolve this. Even if we lose some bases, there's no reason why Europe is key to the place and attack like places like Yemen. In fact, we're doing them in these type of the government consensus. So now they say the plan would simply result in a new war zone if an attack occurred. If an attack occurs, it would be on the United States. That's the only way that there would be another war zone, but we can see their impact, which means by that time a extinction would have occurred via a miscalculated war. The affirmative should not be able to spin this argument. Now they say heightening standards is not able to solve the plan choice U.S. counterterror policy framing issue. All of our evidence is compared to the plan and assumes the world of the counterplan high quality compared evidence should outweigh as plan inevitably done by harsh individual error. It sends the signals to adversaries exactly where we go. High battlefield does not actually turn to find anywhere in international optics. It simply does not make sense in the age of terrorism. Terrorist whole strategy is based on avoiding direct combat with the U.S. The plan lets them know exactly where and what the U.S. strategy will be and let them plan accordingly. First resort targeting outside his own conflicts, deny terrorist safe havens, reverse causal codifying the restriction sends signals back to massive victory for terrorists across the globe. It's unique because Obama is able to re-expand first resort targeting killings as long as he has legal authority. Court 13. Invoking the authority to offer the opportunity to do so, U.S. reaching the include enemy cannot afford to space and operational cost of this version. That becomes the MO of the age of operation beyond the hot zone, two-part test producer version, forward, and the operation go more unconventional source the authority for state to press attack. Despite the divided Obama started decision with the amount relating under pressure, all the guided party, typically if you're inconsistent with the treaty, you've heard to raise the issues of assessing what the point conflict is back in non-complicated expensive geographic zones, critical strategic foundation, PAC, the third and mixture of the law, diverse U.S. response indicated delivered military power, measurement effect of the influence power by targeting terrorist operations and measure of force resort to become a primary modality or strategy of the threat of intelligence created the risk when they will literally outside of hot zone. No way multiplies the imperative. Our link destroys all of the evidence of all their spin about the plan merely codifying current policy. The current approach makes limits on first resort killings part of the rules of engagement, not a legal restriction on authority. Legally codifying the material kills flexibility. Court 13. One was proposing in order to legal policy to start a legal authority was it was clearly we shared opposition modifying this legal authority aspect already capture kills critical limitation exists. Authority just trying to make free framework also limit otherwise lawful authority must be situation in the text just able to and leadership this approach to reform the partial ability to capture kill obligation policy applicability but capture completely feasible that comes from protects and work in the stock of and capability. This had turned the entire case illegally codifying geographic limits causes the U.S. to circumvent the ban, relying on even worse legal justification. That's clearly networks for both norms and allied perception. Court 13 law of combat relation, critical crossroads under the third draft strategy, TCD, the underworld of the arguability, common no seven hostility framework, the only draft states are no draft subversive, use the same power of the guys legal fiction of the law enforcement, legal resolve online, like something this, the reject for inserting into the planning of military operation, and expose those conduct to protect the state legal liabilities based on in a positive and norms. The plan causes massive resistance and backlash by the executive agency. The U.S. views itself as an armed conflict with Al-Qaeda, regardless of geographical zone of conflict in 2010, where can we conduct a conflict in the U.S. We self-engaged armed conflict with Al-Qaeda, associated forces, the law made over the service, question whether the guard zone conflict, foundation, question the directly on the applicable law within the zone. B, the plan applies human rights law framework to areas where the U.S. currently understands as governed by the law of armed conflict that causes military backlash against both the plan and any broader effect to make battlefield conduct comply with human rights law that's net offense against both advantages. Corn doesn't that fail to recognize these logical boundary for application of the issue by the law is the distortion shorting on in the LOAC and distortion of the legal the received and operational logical boundary force that produce one of the reference first be a routine disregard of the Border Regulations. Second, be absolute resistance to the application of norms of relation and issue directly to armed conflict application norms right operational and possible human rights including not really find this part of the law and rejection application disables effective to critical assessment where norms are applicable risk of override application reason potential to put disabled and to the FCC in multilateral operations. They say they heighten standards. That was all answered about. They say these necessary means are critical as a measure. This evidence just says as a matter of measure of policy is good. That's what the status quo is, and that's where evidence assumes. They say there is no impact to the special ops except for the mandatory special ops readiness force as maintaining targeted killings a measure of first resort is key to military training, operational effectiveness. Force resort guidelines drive the training process. Key to instill a warrior ethos necessary to high tempo ops. Obviously, this whole scroll of Thomas Evans indicates is key to French diversion materials from early to terrorists, etc. They say they don't affect special operations. Who do you think does the snatching grabs in the world of the plan capture is done by JSOC? Fact, Wikipedia will take that Pepsi challenge now. They say that the fact AQ exists in the status quo disproves the VA specifically false statement that they will not be able to organize enough to launch an attack. What our 1C4 evidence indicates also this evidence indicates capture with Phil in those other places. Those this also proves that this also proves that at least the 1C because capture violates sovereignty. There's no answer. Their coherent answer to the question of the cross-examination of the 1C. If they say yes to capture, then they would say yes to the world of the counter plan and uniqueness. There's currently no legal consensus on how to define battlefield in the world. But clearly, conflict takes place outside of traditional battlefields. Blank doesn't have traditional military discourse data on the terms of right wartime areas out of fear. Is a region actually on that combat operation? The Rockers did not identify battles Vietnam and our weapons and same for struggle in this area. They become temporary levels. Not attempts to use existing from the terms that conflict the U.S. and Al-Qaeda was fundamental question about the law of the Lord of Communist take place beyond obviously Iraq, Afghanistan, every extent to no little agreement on where battlefield is. The plan standard would prohibit targeting killings as a first resort anywhere that lacks large-scale military presence or consistent aerial attacks. Their author concedes that would cover most future conflicts. Article 13, these articles in the existence of zone active facilities involving large military presence, consistent aerial attacks when they don't have in terms of general gravity. Future conflicts more likely to target operation force without an active zone of hostilities. The only alternative to first resort killing is capture mandate according to 13 decibel. Aggressively material the authorities measure as a measure of first resort ability outside of the decibel. Most of them capture the rather kill the ability for first what is feasible. LOC as experts contest the interpretation argument until the and becomes more to combat the law permits application of deadly force of first resort. New detentions are politically possible. Crime capital for killing means that we want to either hijack 2012. The important action is not who we are detaining autonomy is the black eye. The recent steps for the desk also conversation ability to move people out of autonomy through transfer range. There is to get people out of autonomy functional ability to movement. Anyone in the ability to maintain matters not having incentive to kill people. The plan bans targeted killing as long as there's the potential to capture might become viable in the future. Goal 13, the killing it requires a trillion and the threat of attack. 90, the capture not feasible. So with force last 40, the capture not feasible. Going to the suspect about to attack is possible to capture. All the feasible later simple the self-defense requires lethal force being only used the last resort of gratification of the prison to be used as a first resort. Restricting target killings are first resort establishes a requirement that the U.S. offer opportunities for surrender before targeting blank as well. Unrelated we see the legitimate targeting deadly force of the first resort of combatant elevation offer opportunity for surrender from the now be solicited human rights requirement that forcibly used as first resort as last resort of retaliation and capture suspected terrorists or lethal organization using force and self-defense kind of organism for resort to use an alternative meaning and offer surrender or attempt to capture they made this obligation capture for something independent of the short conception of obligation the words of the other way the force made deadly force accepted protecting themselves innocent for immediate danger team every time we made a capture for resorting to lethal force that bans drones everywhere loose having full legal determination on constant battlefield particularly shipping into drone battlefield is used as German so by IHL outside so by IHL international human rights supply.
Let me argue that real quick, and then Arjun. Okay.
So the counterplan uses three criteria. There's self-defense or response to an attack located within a state we've consulted.
Hold on. All of those? Well,
No, I'm just summarizing the counterplan text. Or unwilling to prosecute and neutralize actors. Can you name a place in the world right now that doesn't meet those criteria?
1 second, sorry.
Okay, the self-defense thing is just to clarify that we're talking about the current war with Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, actually a lot of your evidence talks about self-defense as a justification. Can you name a terror safe haven that's ever existed that couldn't be targeted on self-defense grounds and required LOAC?
Could you repeat the question?
Name a safe haven or an individual terrorist ever who could not be construed as a self-defense based threat to the U.S.
They have to be affiliates of Al-Qaeda or in Al-Qaeda.
So there's a
it's
status
not
test.
everyone ever. Our 1 and C Corn
No,
evidence
no, no,
says...
stop. You're getting the question backwards. So it's a status test as to whether someone is a threat under self-defense, which the plan and the counterplan do not modify. And you don't change the status test, who do we exclude?
We exclude... Okay, Arjun is taking the counterplan. So, like, these questions, I'm not really sure what the point of them are.
Your strategy is abundantly clear. I'm asking you about it.
Our counterplan excludes states that are unwilling or unable to give us TKs as a measure of first resort.
Name a state.
Our evidence doesn't go into the specifics on it, but maybe like Somalia, for example.
The Somali government would say no to U.S. incursion
Potentially.
to the plan.
The entire point of our
The Somali government would...
The entire point of our DA is that current U.S. counterterror policy is fine, so I can't list the states that they would jump into precisely because they would just jump into different states that the plan prohibits action in.
Let's move on to the special ops link. I think it's backwards. Why is requiring a strike happening necessarily before capture key to capture training?
No, it's not. Our argument is that TK training is key. Our evidence says that first resort doctrine guides how they train. The plan gets rid of.
So the
TKs is
people
first
he
resort.
sends to capture, the SEALs, to train, need to train as drone operators and then use the drone.
No. They're not training as drone. They're not the ones training as drone operators.
So
those are the
who is
people on the
administering
ground.
some
Those are the
training?
people. Those are JSOC people on the ground that follow the same guidelines.
So the people on the ground need us to use the drone first in order to be trained.
Their training is guided by killing as a first resort. People on the ground help drones by gathering intel, etc.
Are we all on the same page? Like, what you just said does not seem to answer my question at all. Like, maybe we'll try again, maybe? Like, what card are you going to hand the judges for the internal link?
Corn. We want to see. It's pretty good.
A lot of your ed is talking about human rights law, the invocation of human rights law. What about the plan mandates that?
Our evidence says that banning TKs as a measure of first resort is codified in IHRL.
What part of the plan is a ban?
I asked the question in the cross-section, I want to see, do you ban TKs as a measure of first resort? And you said yes.
Absent some tests, which the
Yeah.
counterplan agrees with.
No, you said it.
So I'm going to finish Miles' stuff at the bottom of the DA. Politics, the counter plan, and the terrorism advantage.
So how many that were in?
Yeah. Finishing Miles' stuff. So
So Miles clean up.
politics, the counter plan, and then terrorism advantage.
It's been called many things. Or safe haven.
You're on camera, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. He said 5 miles.
They would have double A batteries.
No, he found some.
Wait, you know, I didn't record that.
No, they're just never mind.
I think Jason's got you.
Oh,
Jason.
Jason. Thank you. Just think of this.
I'll be around here through finals. So
Hopefully,
He's around all
hopefully
week.
someone-
Batteries replacements.
Where am I starting? I was like, where's Jennifer? Oh yeah, stop.
Jason,
Oh, you just...
There's stuff called counter
big part of this. What did they do?
He's like, I'm done.
Decent good.
Are you kidding? Jason just been beat.
Yeah.
He keeps looking over at my flow. I don't know if you want to see.
That's what he does a little bit with Andrew.
Everyone ready? I'm just going to jump into reading whatever card Miles, so I'm not doing that, whatever that last card was, and then I'm going to read it. Okay.
IHRL allows weekly use of lethal force. IHRL towards the only strong and dangerous is the only employed individual posted in administrative control who requires new opportunity to surrender for legal force employed because drones are incapable of offering surrender. Drones may not be legally employed in situations governed by territorial. This absolute prohibition does not apply to other forces commonly used counteracts money. Other part of our forces cannot comply with territorial requirements. Drones are not legal boundaries battlefield doesn't negotiate the effect on drones. Their use as weapons is strongly the territorial application to strict geographic codes except the drone use would be considered illegal outside of Afghanistan. Prolif causes rational price escalation, causes accidents, and causes exchange controlling and 12 proliferation opposites ignore. Past 50 years research nuclear charge time incredibly nuclear armament when the increased risk of nuclear war therefore less adversary back then the firstration provided from the upside of 1994 states nuclear crisis rational states running the other western optus the North factories operating historically we have seen the place weapons of high alert dealing launch story low commercial purposes increased risk vaccinal nuclear war politics not going for it the DA doesn't make any sense but there's no impact that seal account plan solves your terrorism on or the dissent turns it which means it's not relevant yes negative yes fiat test affirmative and not get stuck with the terrible status quo not a voting issue and not an argument in the two weeks now the counterplan obviously the permutation links to all of our net benefits which are premised on the plan establishing geographic restrictions on first resort targeted killing inclusion of the plan does not remedy any related still sets geographic limits on targeted killing authority in addition to counterplan the plan text restricts the president's authority the counterplan sets conditions on how that authority must be used doing both is impossible because the inclusion of the plan legally eliminates the authority that the counterplan relies on permutation through the counterplans obviously separates the part of the counterplan is technically competitive because it doesn't include any of the plan's language about zones of hostilities and functionally competitive because it enacts a legally distinct restriction the two options are entirely functionally different and the distinction is explicitly made in our evidence that's core to the permutation severs topical requirements the counterplan text doesn't use the word restrict which means it doesn't include a topical mechanism instead it conditions the use of targeted killings as the first resort restriction or prohibition that means the plan prohibits first resort targeted killing outside of active hostility conditions are distinct because they prohibit shadow ground 12 or restrictions not close according supervised class under sign for upon the authority is relative to which authority drone use as well zero differential second link is allies headshot European allies specifically support the counterplan working 13 outside competition would not be absolutely permanent killing, but would also set a high threshold use degree. The is based on EU concept of engagement of U.S. terms. European many countries want to follow through on rhetoric. Allies increasingly support limited use of the first resort targeted killing and self-defense missions that take place outside of bounds of active mission hostilities. That's the core evidence from you want to see Chris. The Chris evidence in there want to see exclusively about detention. The key line in this card is that quote our friends accept only a law enforcement response outside the years where active conflict. That line has a footnote right after which says quote the Obama administration made clear it will use military commission rule of law detention. The last paragraph of the card also makes that decision clear. The rule of law essential military implementing which such tradition goes in law and where detention our process the justice system Afghanistan transfer detention responsibilities to Afghanistan is our goal. It solves the norms advantage as well. Only our counterplan alone solves it. Our evidence is phenomenally specific and cites every country that they can possibly read the impacts about all state that employ targeted killings use legal justification based on the unwilling or unable documents that evolve into the customary norm that changes. To actively shape the from isolation behavior. That's why the counterclaim codifies a new one that is currently baked out, just more effective and avoids the DA. They're more everywhere. DA doesn't make any sense. Counterclaim solves it. We need to ask the target team consent and identify them as unwilling or unable before intervening. War everywhere only occurs now because the counterclaim is not codified and the U.S. does not fully abide by it. It definitely does not solve this anyway. The U.S. can just expand geographic zones if necessary. Rules, zero link differential, also no impact of this, and the DA should outweigh the counterclaim. Is the best middle ground. The plan perceived as too restrictive on flexibility, which means it will get ignored and violated. That was explained. All above the plan does link to the DA, the counterclaim does link to 2 and C proves. All that link analysis done. The counterclaim doesn't because it's unwilling or unable. Because the U.S. has necessary flexibility. It's all standards and geography is not clearly delineated to allow for terrorist exploitation in the same case. Now, the terrorism advantage. First, the death race, you need this one. The evidence just says that they cannot rule out a terrorist attack coming. That does not prove that it's inevitable. Just
Drives Lincoln Garrett's mean.
There's no way to
Sorry, ours is delivering it. Between speed and velocity is like difference between Aurelio and a 357 man. I'm not asking any more questions about this.
I think that's useful.
Yeah, I think it's so.
That's not all our things that that's our So that's hard. It just depends what you say.
Speed's probably false gravity. Velocity probably doesn't.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, you never remember. Norms, terror, the critique, counterplan, statements. Norms, terror, counterplan, statements.
That's what my
Everybody? Great. Alternate modeling evidence says that we can't get the U.S. can't give up drones not. The point of the affirmative geographic restrictions destroys illegal architecture that prevents potentially trying to strike out against countries across the border. They don't exist really back defense Chinese use below the threshold for them we decide all of these modeling areas to be established geographic restricted with jurisdiction. Los Angeles occurs the U.S. case long about the team for proliferation voting usually they proliferate. The arguments means to circle the counterplan, no go for permission to the counterplan. We do. I was concerned with the definition of LOAC. It's evidence all the context of a UN convention. It's all from as one author Detention. It's not speaking about clarifying laws of wars. Needs to be codified in terms of geographic restrictions. Not flexible self-defense forms, which is working task. They have no evidence that the U.S. adoption spills over. They have evidence that speaks in the broader terms about how that could be an effective international signal, but no evidence that the counterplan's codification is uniquely key. Task was far better. Think about the counterplan. It says that we need to get consent, but then clarifies that we don't always need to get consent. We just need to notify them, which proves it does not clarify LOAC. That means you should live over self and sex. The perception is enough to cause our impacts core in 13 years. Authority over geography disputes short circuit all the cooperation memory and 12 the geography and precision all legally tested moving the US coast of dangerous nations and carries down conflict with them shopping center as distribute should we go about it as a lightning rod vocal through at 11 geographic sense line the US front and tracks the US line expand go back to the US resort to territory incursion the Brooks evidence says that's critical norms to be trying to these borders are key. They're not things like permission to crystal causes relevant arguments about targeting killing architecture gas evidence that we still fall over in self-cooperation. There's no solvency argument that Arch is so happy about is not actually very good. This evidence just says that they say other norms are effective, which is not about geographic restrictions. You prefer gas evidence that's modified allies are specifically critical to it. So even if it's not modified, it always looks to drone precedent. The precedent of war everywhere means they don't solve sovereignty is critical to our European allies as well as other nations. They really lie of work and says that we should consult our evidence that they're fundamentally not happy until there's ability to get rid of the expansive geography of conflict under LOAC, which means they're talking about two different things. We do solve is codified distinction, which means the zones of which means that the zones can move in and out. That doesn't take out the counterplan links to the net benefits. All of their core evidence and generic restrictions on the use of force as a first resort that they do not distinguish between the plan and the counterplan. You should allow this as a new one and consult other ones because they blew up the strategy and the block and a lot of things were justified by new cards. Anything else here? No, that's good. Okay, this set. Top. 3 distinctions taken out almost all their offers. Their core cards all say that we shouldn't restrict operations based on geography. No evidence speaks the first resort for effectiveness. We still allow for intervention, but only after other options are exhausted, which is task weapons. They're not about drones. All their evidence about broader operations. We do not restrict, so we only do these trading arguments could still use self-defense. Their evidence seems a ban or a human rights restriction, neither of which is the plan. There's only one card they read. There's a link to the DASCO restriction. All of our evidence is way better. The least necessary means requirement is self-sufficient. All their evidence assumes the plan also limits self-defense 34, which we can use to intervene anywhere we want to, but we still can attack quickly because there's self-defense justification still exists, but we still solve the app because we clarify the law of war, not the law of self-defense. It's all status quo. statements have limited us our competence and our Christian religious real place if you thought that said using the land will take action only consider that you never politics or high level of the US as interesting the principle of backball protection only the US is actually targeted to show the Russian versus if you target the US universally they got the Islamic bill across the international play pod free for a real pod being killed on pod now terrorism is not unique because black international cooperation is overflow race means effective decapitations critical miscalculations out trying to see means to more international escalation turns the Russian argument makes nuclear attack inevitable the helmet evidence says any nuclear attack causes extinction policy is not the same thing as flexibility Obama could you're talk about Obama cannot break out of the play of the court evidence does not answer the fact that Obama has followed this policy since 2006 means today the safety of insurance already happened or at least the signal of the plan codification is key the signal that which means that circumvention is relevant our sustainability arguments do not our sustainability arguments about target killing geography is key to prevent legal challenges Europe is key because of Intel bases assertions she went against our evidence that the US is not circumvent the ban fiat solves that also status quo policy proves upon one backlash the blank evidence takes out the whole TA because it says if the US thinks that war is everywhere we'll so intervene which means that we will but we still codify the notion of the law we are not a human rights regulation regime that don't into the blue lines are the vast majority of 2NC offense self-defense is durable legal framework plays in place to house and 12 the same as the inherent right self-defense only one condition set up by just like extra use of these facts and given the both conditions I think use an operating defense we can still use force anywhere close and 13 geographical issues without President Ability is forced back to U.S. and United States outside the Pacific region. Brennan was asked about safe haven to clarify we'll go over what we need to do. Or C-13 President addressed the U.S. position, the U.S. back to the U.S. not shouldn't until we have about 50 our conflict laws. U.S. to use force in other countries prove that we can use a limit and our requirements with all their going evidence document. Our government card says that it will allow for intelligence cooperation, which allows for capture, which is effective. Also means that we obviously tell the special force circuits about being able to capture people. Yes, sir.
If unwilling and unable has been such a big deal and it's still in place, then their impacts can't be unique.
If unwilling and unable is a big deal, but still in place, their impacts can't be unique or proves it is not unique. So there's no tooling to special operations service, no evidence of special operation training. Is for readiness, their target that is their tooling to that they do some special operation outside zones of our republic, but it's not key to stop overall proliferation. Their evidence says that captures good, but we encourage capture, which is obviously reason the case capture does not violate law geography. It's law enforcement first, which takes out their argument why we can constrain or why we can play human rights in IHL. Their foreign evidence is all about a ban. All of our evidence says that capture comes first is good, but we still do not have mandatory capture, which is like the Cole evidence also says self-defense, which means that we can circumvent it in that way, but we still solve the case. The blank cards by human rights. The Lewis card says it hurts human rights, doesn't impact you with their creating evidence proves that proliferation has massive incentives, means the special force obviously not sufficient to solve it, but our 2AC evidence says proliferation is useful, it actually causes breakout of war. Also, our impacts turn it because a world of Chinese proliferation or drones occurs, other proliferation results of Roberts evidence.
it seems like we should have to like civil society. That is really bad way. There's no like.
Jason, here's a flashback. The first ever college year in my life, my boss was in Market C, I was in College C. It's weird that the rooms never change.
No, it is so weird, I agree.
My floor was terrible.
Okay. The DA didn't count on. DA didn't count on.
There are no 2 in our card.
You want? I don't know. I can flash to you now. That probably change it.
If you promise.
Functionally. Okay, we're good?
Two arguments are conceded in one item makes it impossible for the affirmative to win this debate. Ace of point circumvention. The only thing he says to answer this argument is if he also are evidence about commanders on the ground who have pulled the trigger. The evidence is that plane can only fiat top level people in the United States federal government. However, arguments indicates that we simply not comply. Arguments indicates that our evidence is specific to LOAC, not about the international human rights laws. Arguments indicates that they would circumvent the plan because they would think it simply untenable in a world of kind of conflict. Arguments indicates that would obviously turn their enormous advantage. All of it says that allies are backlashing because of U.S. hypocrisy in the status quo. If we were to create a law and then we were to create a matter of law and then violate that was obviously send a signal to other countries they can do the same thing, which means to risk accountability that will solve. They didn't solve a set of permutation, which means solving that benefit is to solve accountability. Second of all, terrorism outweighs the entirety of the norms advantage. Conceded argument in the one hour. They have conceded the argument that Russia is the only sphere of extinction, which because we're the only ones enough arsenals to blow the entirety of the planet. Also, the U.S. would freak out after a terrorist attack. We would respond violently, which would kill international norms. And terrorism is happening. Is going to come in the status quo. Their Hamlet evidence indicates that if there was a terrorist attack, that would cause miscalculated nuclear war. Conceded argument. Norms cannot be won by the affirmative, not be line by line. The link debate. Our evidence is fantastically specific about codifying the versus having it a matter of policy. Evidence indicates even though it's a matter of policy, the status quo is not hard and fast. Still allows for flexibility. Critical perceptionally that was conceded in the one hour. The court evidence indicates that sometimes even when it is feasible to capture, we need to kill people because it sends signals there that we are not messing around. Which means even if the affirmative results in even if they still result in TKs, but as a measure of second result, sometimes we need to have them. Sometimes we need to kill even when capture is a first resort. Or the Daskell evidence is fantastic. It says the affirmative codification outside the battlefield will basically limit TKs everywhere except for Afghanistan. Limit TKs basically everywhere except for Afghanistan. This is there's so much evidence we want to see. So the two you should not allow them to cross by other evidence that contradicts it because that is obviously what the plan. He's obviously one that assumes the plane capture is impossible, which means our 2 evidence says we would not be able to do either. There's simply not rumor in Guantanamo. There's not political will, which and our evidence indicates that a direct trade-off argument that we would not do both. Surrender was conceded in the 1 hour we need surrender is a measure of first resort in the world of the affirmative. Our evidence indicates in order to even offer the possibility of surrender, TKs have to be taken off of the table. The 1 hour evidence indicates that limits TKs to everywhere but Afghanistan. We cannot use them anywhere. This evidence is devastating, and it's not simply about international human rights laws. The law is fantastically specific to the implementation of the plan. They say it's not about drones. Our evidence is all about U.S. killing policy in the sense of unless they provide a card that says we're doing that with like snipers or something, that's obviously ridiculous. Our evidence is compared between the plan and counter means it obviously assumes drone policy in the sense of they say human rights. The plan's not a human rights restriction. Our evidence indicates a first resort is actually a customary human rights law framing issue. Our foreign evidence indicates there's no codified definition of the laws of armed conflict in the sense of related to geographic zones, so they cannot access any of their offense about the plan. The key to that are avoiding IHR, etc. They say it's not a matter of policy of law, it's based on flexibility of the argument. I was extending they say terrorism 98, they're wanting to see evidence indicates there's a risk that it may not happen instead of status quo, since we can't rule it out, and also it's all about the length the affirmative makes it worse, which means you should not raise the extinction. They say over sort of like conceded to argument that we will still have some cooperation. Then we have to win that every single one of our allies kicks us out. If we still have one ally that likes us in the world, of the capital of the world, of the status quo, it means that we have enough overflight to be able to launch our tracks. And the status quo, the signal link was conceded by the one our one team with evidence is fantastic. Now the question indicates that the plan would send a signal because of massive spread of safe havens. All the arguments I made above why they destroy the ability to attack those means that the firm results in inevitable terrorism. They say turns Russia. That was our argument. They say policy, not flexibility. He's following the status quo. That was all answered above. It's not hard and fast. He's not following it 100%. The status quo. They say circumvention is wrong because if you have that was answered above, it's how commanders on the ground that the affirmative should not be able to figure out circumvention is obviously core ground on this negative topic. They say Europe is key because of intel, etc. The most of this will be answered on the counterclaim. They say blank check out the DA. No, our evidence is all about geographic restrictions, which is what the plan does, and about reducing limits on first resort, which is what the plan does. They say we can still use force group. These arguments about self-defense, the self-defense part of the counterclaim just clarifies that we're talking about the status quo, status quo blockade. If this is true, then it takes out the entirety of the permanent assault for all the perceptions arguments I was making in the overview, because the average simply it's circumvented, which is actually worse for U.S. hypocrisy, because we would establish law and then bring to the world of the counterclaim's ideals and say did not extend a permutation, which means that it is the only one for a hope of a chance of enforcement. Seriously, if the U.S. can use these measures of self-defense, everything Arch was talking to me about in the cross-examination of the 2&C clearly links to the affirmative, because that would result in an inevitably expansive definition, the counterclaim. Oh, yeah. Yes, impact of special law. Yes, it's critical to special operations arguments. They use target killing guidelines in the status quo as their metric for training arguments. It's not necessary to solve proliferation laws. They divert materials from road turning up is fantastic. From the 2&C, the one in R indicates that proliferation causes extinction. Rationality does not matter. In the status quo arguments indicates it will be seen rational in world proliferation to use nuclear weapons on the counterclaim. At the top, they seriously do not have any game on our Nords argument. Our court evidence, as well as the modeling evidence for all of the cases, indicates that the countries will not model norms that are not in their self-interest. Our evidence indicates unwilling, unable has been the codified policy of the status quo, and countries will not go against that because it is in their interest. China does not have a second resort in South China Sea. They cannot give war by the affirmative is able to influence them, and they'll be able to point to the hypocrisy of the circumvention after the plan to be able to justify our norms. So evidence indicates that means that only the counterclaim allows to clarify the legal statute, because we changed the unwilling and unable standard in the status quo to make it more stringent, which results in the infinite war arguments. Now, the terrorism cooperation conceded evidence in the 1AR that indicates that allies will cooperate with us in the world of the counterclaim. They are crucially recognizing that terrorism is not just not following the conventional laws of armed conflict, because it is simply a threat that where terrorists cross over borders and it cannot be limited to a single nation state. This evidence is fantastic, and our evidence specifically cites the allies that their evidence references. All of their evidence has one line about geography and then it mentions zero, but that is wrong. Without this statement, there's no mechanism for the counterclaim to spill over to solve the norms or boil evidence is generic, as long as we create some momentum that is able to solve. They say there is no consent to the world of the counterclaim. Consent is just part of clarifying whether or not they are unwilling to. They say geography is key. All of this was mostly in sort of the DA. What's up? Oh, the counterclaim is not linked to that benefit. All of our evidence is about geographic station. Their evidence is about indefinite detention, not TKs. Proves they link to the argument about it's not about TKs, and it takes out the internal links to European ally co-op.
Lightsabers and then they're
the counterplan and then the dissent. You all set? Together. LOAC recognizes the concept of zones out, which is why current U.S. legal justification for war everywhere is such a big effing deal. It screws up hundreds of years of bylaw precedent and case law and embedded in norms. The free-for-all is empirically proven by the fact that 75 countries are building norms now and engaging in territorial incursions. Precedent loss turns miscalculation because of those incursions. It's also a central measure argument. It's internal link turns terror because war zones are, by definition, the biggest safe havens because there are missiles going everywhere. This is proven by Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, failed states are the comparative biggest risk because there's no intelligence, which means there can't be effective decapitation, which the negative has conceded is the only relevant internal link as long as capability is maintained. Russia also gets drawn into such ways because of critical energy interests in our 2AC evidence, so that accesses all of the 2NR comparative internal link work. But we will refute the uniqueness for terror and say that it's empirically denied, which means none of this is net offense against the affirmative. Now, the yes model, the Roberts evidence is very, very good on empirics. We have the best studies on the theory of arms races. Then he says that the unwilling and unable standard is an all cause to all of this, but that also non-uniques all of the dissat impacts because the unwilling and unable standard, if it is enshrined and if it is followed, is something that's embedded in case law and the status quo, and that countries should already be pricing into their proliferation calculations. The counterplan does not solve it sufficiently because it's only restricted to TK, which means that the legal framework that's used as a justification for overall special operations circumvention remains in place, which means even if they access the AF's internal link to solving their impacts, they do not access their own internal link for getting to that same impact. The big trick that they have for solving our allies' internal link is this Dworkin card, but the way they highlight it is entirely aspirational. We'll show you our highlight after the debate, but it says that the EU, quote, might accept the counterplan and that unable and unwilling might be an acceptable workaround. But she concludes in every AF article, which are all much longer, that LOAC is the ideal. It's the title of the article. It's her overall advocacy. The AF is sufficient, so the fact that zones are nebulous cannot be net offense against the affirmative. Every 1AC card is a say yes card from the perspective of allies to the concepts of zones, and people are obeying it now. It's just that the concept is being murked by the U.S., which means that the counterplan does not fiat that conception of LOAC automatically goes away. Now, he does not get to the counterplan links to that benefit with enough time. I think this is abundantly clear to everybody. Any restriction that's codified in a first resort framework, any restriction that requires that we consult countries before we attack in their borders, triggers the super hyperbolic explanation of the corn link in the 2NR. And if the link that connecting targeted killing standards to overall training and special operations is really that tenuous now, then any form of self-restraint is automatically perceived as weakness by Obama, which the terrorists are able to price in, which also internally turns safe havens, which exacerbates what were already some pretty huge uniqueness problems. Go to the dissent now. Why would Obama issue an order that would circumvent his own existing policy? Commanders on the ground have already internalized our standard, and they are putting it into practice. That's been the case since 2006. That is the 1AC Dworkin card. U.S. hypocrisy is not unique, so it can't possibly be offense, and the entirety of our signal advantage is predicated on the understanding that circumvention is something that begs the question of legal justification, and we all agree that self-defense exists under the plan and the counterplan, so this is really no big deal. I answered the terror impact calculus above. Now, the link. This is a really big problem. The whole whole one you see is premised on the idea that Obama has already restricted himself to the plan's non-first resort standard and recognizes the concept of zones, but people don't trust him and they don't trust future presidents because they look to LOAC first and foremost. If that is true, then we have three really long cards that make this distinction wonderfully. Then you need to find a NIT card that says that codification leads to a constraint over and above what the U.S. is already doing as a matter of practice. You won't find that card because Korn didn't just write an article this year complaining about a proposal that had already happened. He wrote an article recommending against a ban on using targeted killings outside zones, period. The app is not a ban. That means we don't force the capture standard, we don't engender ops overseas, we don't preclude asking other countries if they're able and willing. All of the things that the counterplan does are still possible under the act, which means that there's no uniqueness for the terms. The Korn evidence that they're hyping as the big link card that they're going to hand you after the debate is predicated on the understanding that the act enshrines a specific status test that is higher than the status quo, aka we conflate the question and make it more complicated for soldiers to find out who they're allowed to shoot at. That's just not something that we do, and it can't possibly be true in the context of drones because it's not the same thing as troops on the ground. The perception link, the status quo should solve it because it's existing policy. How will the terrorists know whether once we shoot the bomb at them, it was our first or second legal resort? The effect is exactly the same for the terrorist who's getting shot. The Dworkin card, their explanation of the Dworkin card was answered above. They say capture fails. We do not mandate capture when such capture is infeasible, which is the whole point of including as a first resort in the plan text. They say the surrender argument is a link. If drones are unable to surrender by definition, which is what their Lewis card says, then how does it link to the plan? It's predicated on the spillover to special ops that I'll get to in a second, but the counterplan does not solve it. Because the counterplan text only says drones and targeted killing. It does not say all operations, which means that however surrender is now under human rights law, I guess that's how it is inevitably. They say that LOAC doesn't work now. The affirmative changes that by sending a clear signal. Also, they do not have any evidence refuting the theory of compliance, only saying that the counterplan is another form of compliance. They say that terrorism is a linear risk, but they conceded the app is sufficient, so there can't be any terminal impact uniqueness. They say that one ally is enough. This is so dumb. Robert's evidence lists a whole slew of allies in other geographic regions. Obviously, the failure of intelligence also bypasses this because if an ally restricts intelligence and they're the only one who has it, then we no longer have it anymore. They say safe havens, but in cross-ex he cannot describe a single country that the plan excludes that the counterplan includes. I think that should be the burden for the negative since their evidence doesn't do that for them. We do not expect their ground to reject the argument at the team. We just know link the circumvention arguments. If self-defense is the squo and the counterplan is self-defense and the app is self-defense, then oh well, it's in Article 2, which means it's inevitable because it's constitutional authority, and all of our authors obviously assume it. The prolif impact, it won't happen, which means even if Kronig says it would be really, really bad, states are not pursuing nuclear weapons now and it'll be super slow, which means we can price it into the international system as long as drones don't disrupt the precedent, which is Roberts.